welcome to this evening's show. Right, good. Glad to see everybody is here. We've got quite a lot of people who've already jumped in already. That's unusual and good and fine and great. Tonight's going to be a little bit different from what we normally do, simply because I opened up a request a while ago for people to submit adventures to me to join a little writers group that we've been putting together. Now, the objective of the writers group is to create a series of adventures which can be used as a standalone campaign or as individual adventures. And we've decided, let's open up the field, let's bring in some more people, let's have a look and see what's going on. Let's get a feel for it. So that's the plan. And I must admit, we had a lot of submissions. We had a tremendous amount of submissions from that because it was quite a short time frame. Now, people who were submitting, some people went, oh, it's too short a time frame for me, that sort of thing. Deadlines are part of the writing process, and although the deadlines won't be as insane as they were for this particular assignment, they still exist, and we have to operate to said deadlines. Now, what I'm going to be doing tonight is, because of the tremendous effort that everybody who submitted, they put in, I should say, I will be going through those rather than the usual adventure submissions that we have done before. And I'm going to start going through those a little bit earlier. So if you have questions, as usual, put the word question in caps in front of your question, and I will endeavour to attempt to answer it. Honourable fire. There's questions. There are those questions coming straight in. Okay, so let's look at White Tiger 225's question is, my game is dead after 6 years. Dead after 6 years. Any advice for moving on? Absolutely. Try a new system. Try a new setting. Do something along those lines. That would be my ultimate suggestion to you. Do that, and I think you'll be in a very happy place. As a matter of fact, this afternoon, I've been resurrecting a world that I haven't played in for quite some time, and that was a campaign. Individually, it had been a year or year and a half, 2 years in the running, but it had been in a world that I had been playing in for 10 years, and I felt, you know what, it's time for a change. The campaign was successfully concluded. I wanted to move away and try something different, and so I did. And this afternoon, I went back to that map and started to tweak, because I think I'm ready to go back to that world, which may be exciting for some people. Honourable 596 says, where are your Star Wars replays uploaded? Well, they're uploaded to the channel, but they're hidden at the moment. You can't see them. I'm being mean and nasty. Yes, I'm keeping them aside, because what I decided to do originally was, we said, okay, we're going to break them up into hour-long slots and then release those once a week. But after playing 2 sessions, one which was 2 hours long and one which was 3 hours long, I decided that it's best just to release them as they are, as the sessions, because they are not what I would call high production. They were never meant to be recorded for live viewer consumption. They were meant to be just have fun and relax and play the game as one does, because so seldom do I get to do that. And so to break them up would be very odd. So I've got 2 in hand. We will be recording another one next week. And so the question is do we start to release them with the possibility of there being a long gap between release of videos? We do record them every 2 weeks, so there is that. Or, you know, do I keep them until they're ready and then we release them? I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to think about that. So anyway, right. Desmond says, how to deal with GM exhaustion. It's very simple, Desmond. Yeah? Stop. Just tell your party, listen, I'm tired. Watch the video from Friday where it spoke about, if you are bored, if you are tired, stop. Finish off the adventure. If you can. Try and wrap it up in one last session and then take a break. Become a player or switch to board games, switch to computer games, do something or anything that you can in order to step away from the game for a little bit. And then I suggest changing the setting and changing the rulebook. Completely different. So don't go from, oh, we're playing D&D, we're now playing Pathfinder. Don't just go, okay, that's it. No, go from Dungeons and Dragons to, I don't know, 40k or Cthulhu or something. Just break it up, do a couple of one-shots. Remember why you started GMing in the first place and why you enjoy it. GM Brightside says, will you still be reviewing cow homework today? No, I won't be doing any cow reviews today. I'm going to be looking at the submissions that we got for the GM writing team for the Great Library project that were submitted. They were absolutely spectacular, and I feel that it's right to showcase the ones that the ones that were submitted and to talk about the strengths and the weaknesses, because people like critical feedback. Leonard Berger said, did you ever have a dragon rule one of your cities? If so, how did it end with him? Well, Leonard Berger, I ran a campaign which you can actually find on the YouTube channel that you're on at the moment called The Adventures of the Windswift, and that was about a whole bunch of dragons who ruled the world and were kicked out, sent to another dimension, only they were trying to come back. Little did our heroes know. Mwahaha. I won't spoil it for you if you want to go and have a look at it. But yes, I have certainly had dragons rule. And the ultimate question that you have to ask yourself is, do you want the dragon to remain in power, or do you want the dragon to lose power to the players? Because that's really the way that it would go. And yeah, there we go. There we go. Think about that. Think about that. So I'm happy, by the way, with those Star Wars videos. I see some of the players are in chat. Hello, Laura. I haven't seen anybody else. It doesn't surprise me though. If you want me to release them next week, I'll release them next week. They're literally sitting on YouTube, ready and waiting to go. They just don't have thumbnails yet, so I'll have to do thumbnails. Watcher2417 says, when is the next Hello World stream? I'm not sure that there will be a next Hello World stream for quite some time. World Anvil is currently running their summer camp, which is a July initiative. It's not too late to join. It is a mega project where they're releasing prompts every single day, and you have to write to those prompts. Again, designed to help you really hyper focus and hyper build your world. A lot of fun, and thousands of dollars worth of prizes in there as well. So I think they're going to be busy with that for quite some time. Also, I am in the process of moving from where I have been to my new location, and that's going to be happening over the next couple of months, and so I don't really want to commit to too much. I've actually already stopped a game because of all the disruption that will be happening, but it was one of my private games, so don't stress. Dragon says, in a game using skills, is there a limit on how many different skills there should be? Mostly with regards to fluff skills. My dad was the village baker. I have the baking skill. I wouldn't say baking skill, I would say cooking skill, because if you have baking, does that mean that you can't make stir fry, or does it mean you can't grill a good steak? I would genericize that into cooking as a skill, or food prep or something along those lines. If you're the GM and you want to have that, then that's absolutely fine, but then there should be some kind of advantage to having that skill, or to disadvantage to not having that particular skill. I think that's important to bear in mind. Any skill that is in the book should have a value. There should be something, should be a purpose for taking it. Now, I know players like to take skills, I know I certainly do, like to take skills that actually have, you know, they're because the character would have that particular skill. My character grew up with a baker, so he should be pretty good at cooking. If the GM never uses that, I think that's a bit of a sad thing. So Mr. Cade says, what do you find to be the best system for a sci-fi campaign? To be perfectly honest with you, the system that I have been working on, called the Tri-Fire system, which is all about science fiction, I have been designing that for quite some time. I've been playing it every second Friday, supposedly, although that hasn't worked out, with a bunch of players. They're thoroughly enjoying it. Aside from that, I would say the best that I can think of for a sci-fi campaign that's most accessible as well to new players is the D20 Modern rulebook with the D20 Future rulebook add-on, and it's D&D 3.7. So all of the skills are the skills that you would expect. You've got your 6 attributes as you're rolling a d20. You've still got armor class, all that kind of wonderful stuff. I would look at that and go that way. So yeah, have a think about that one. Okay, so Good Instrument says, with the Great Library Adventures, will the Great Library Adventures be set in the same world? Will it be easy to string them into a campaign and learn coherent lore? Okay, so this is preemptive, Good Instrument, but the idea is that the adventures are standalone. And then there will be a companion book that, or not book, that's wrong. There will be a companion supplement, if you like, that will then string them together and then would give you world lore. So I'm very much aware that my fantasy settings, oftentimes people don't like the cultures, or they don't like the politics that are set up, or they want to put it into their own game. I mean, that's the purpose. So the idea is that you get the adventure is generic in terms of setting. And if you wanted it into a campaign, you get the campaign almanac. I don't know what you would call it, but it would link them together, and then has potential for linking more together, so you can actually have a much bigger campaign. So that's part of the plan. That's why I needed extra people to come in and help me write it, because it's quite a big project. D&D Map says 2 of our players of a 5-player game just quit. Now our GM has to scale down the adventure for 3 players. Are there any tips you could give our GM? If you're in the middle of an adventure and they quit because of life, I think that's very sad for them as well as for yourselves and your GM. In terms of scaling down, if I was your GM, I would, once their characters have been ejected from the campaign, I would level up your characters. Just make them a level higher. And what that will do is that will compensate. If they've got another adventure planned for 5, if you guys are a level higher, that should compensate for the loss of the 2 party members. And if they had specific skills which your party no longer has, you as the player should go and hire an NPC who has those skills. Turn it into an adventure where, well, the rogue and the ranger just left, so we have no long range attack and we have no way of detecting traps or opening locked doors. We need to go and hire a ranger who can open doors and stuff. It becomes a great little side adventure. It gives your GM an opportunity of introducing an NPC and moving on from there. Or potentially, why not go and find another player to join your table? Adding in a new player is sometimes so exciting. You get to make a new friend. What's wrong with that? Sharingan Tales says, what techniques or methods do you have for coming up with names for settlements? Well, generally speaking, what I do is, if I look at a settlement, I will say, okay, what's the culture that predominates in this area? What culture runs the city? And it might be a Arthurian culture, so we're looking for very British sounding names, so Shield Guard and Brentwood and Hollylock, those kinds of things. If the culture is more, say, Russian, then wood becomes, I don't know what the word wood is in Russian, so then I will go and look it up and say, right, well, stock is now so Brentstock, Brentwood, Brentstock. So I try and align it to the culture. If it's orcish culture, you go, well, what do my orcs sound like? And that's up to you as the GM. So if your orcs are, my orcs are usually Klingon, so I do the same technique. I will go and look for Klingon words and usually go, and go, I can pronounce that, but I get criticized, or not criticized. People say, I have no idea how to pronounce that name. There are no vowels and there are more apostrophes and exclamation marks than I know what to do with. So I'm very much aware that that is definitely something that can happen if you are going to make it too far gone. So sometimes you might say, well, that's a bit of a tongue twister, so let me add a vowel in here and we drop a consonant, and that will help sort that out. Why is the text being cut off? I've only just noticed that now. No one told me. That's no good. Okay. Right. Next question Next question. Yes, BT Threadbare, a campaign guide. That was the word that I was looking for. And yes, I do take questions from both Twitch and from YouTube. As you can see behind me, there is a Twitch question and there's a YouTube question. Or thing. Anyway. Right. Where are we? Another question from 596. My personal rework of the Drow is that they are divinely appointed guardians of the Arctic Circle, where all the aberrations are locked up. They share gods with the other elves, but the others are slowly losing faith due to their gods focusing so much on the Drow. Do you have any advice for further fleshing them out? They live in the Arctic. What do they eat? Very few insects enjoy living in the Arctic, so traditionally Drow like spiders, don't they? How have they adapted to living in the Arctic? What do they eat? What do they farm? Are they under ice, in which case it's not so much a dark cavern as a bluish cavern? How have they adapted to life on the ice? Answer that question. I think that will certainly provide you with some direction. Another thing to look at. Sure, the elves are guarding the beasties. And who is looking after the Drow? The wives, the husbands that stay at home, the caregivers, the street sweepers. What do they think about living in the ice lands? Think about that. Please remember, if you are asking a question, to put the word question in caps lock in front of the word question. So Dekrishka asks, my players will reach in the next adventure a village that is slowly corrupted by a demon. Any advice to show the creeping evil in the area or community? One of the things that you could do is, as they are in the village or just about to arrive in the village, they come across a farmer who's grumbling, and the farmer says, oh, well, you know, I was just in village now, and old Magrat, she's got a bit of tongue on her these days. Grouchy is all out. Bit my hair off. Clean right off. You see that? That's going to take a couple of weeks to grow back. Nasty business. Nasty. She's just so very angry recently. It's very tough. People are going to notice if there is corruption going on, and they're going to want to talk about it because it's something new. But it is sometimes easier to talk about it to complete strangers than it is to your fellow locals because, well, Magrat's gone clearly nuts and no one wants to talk about it. Except to strangers who they won't know who Magrat is. So there you are. So there we are. Okay, what? Oh, I see what's going on there. Wait, what? There's lots of shouting going on. Right. I see. Give me a second here. Bye. That's so easy. All the power. Okay. Right. Telemon says, how would you roleplay a gifted character? Any fun quirks or traits? Gifted characters, depending on what type of gift they are. So gifted characters, generally speaking, I think, are faster than everybody else. So they move ahead in conversations quite quickly. So they tend to forget to say stuff, right? So that's something to think about. I know, for example, that Stephen Fry, who's a very gifted orator and speaker and author and actor and performer and all those kinds of wonderful things, he had to slow down in his writing because he would just write words as fast as he could, and he would generally compress the words together and forget to put spaces in. So he had to slow down. So, yeah, it's an interesting space that gifted people generally find themselves in. Make sure whatever quirk that you do go with, that it isn't disruptive to the game. You don't want to do that, because if it's disruptive to the game, you're going to have a how can I put it? Your quirk becomes irritation, and irritation gets you banned. So you don't want to do that. You really don't want to do it. I'm going to sit here in this chat for a little bit and just see what's going on here. Anyway. Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. Right. So back to questions. And let's just watch that one. Where are we? Where are we? Da, 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 da. Where are you? Why is it showing me all this nonsense? What does that do? Does that work? I think that's done. All right, Laura, see if you have the power. All the power's been given to Laura. Are we insane? Do you have any idea what that woman is capable of doing? Not crossing a 10-foot ditch. That much I can tell you. All right, anyway. There you are. There you are. There you are. Okay, so Twitter chat, James tension. Something's going ballistic. Something happened there. I think a bunch of people were bored. Right. Okay, now that I've been completely thrown off my track, I don't know where I was, so just re-ask your questions that I missed, because there we go. Okay, Honourable 596. My rework of the dwarves has them all be clones and or undead living in the last dwarven city. Further details will depend on the setting, but do you have any advice for fleshing them out further? Well, I think that undead dwarves, who made them? Why are they undead? Who made the clones? Who was the master clone maker? And why did he make them clones? That's questions that I would want to know. And if the dwarves aren't sentient, it's stuff that you don't have to answer. But it is something that you should put in terms of discoverable information for the party to learn later on. D&D Map says, my paladin just took the oath of the ancients, and our GM decided that I could no longer use metal items, but I can now bend warp wood. Should I break the oath, or is that a good trade? You can no longer use metal items, but you can now bend warp wood. I think it's entirely up to you in terms of what you find entertaining, and in terms of what you need to do as a character. If your character can use wooden weapons and things, I would say go for it. Why not? The Orange Cow has just donated $10. Well, they did it a bit ago. Has just donated $10, so thank you very much for that. And they say, are you able to say toy boat 10 times fast, asking for a friend? Toy boat. I'm not entirely sure what that will lead up to. Should I be worried? Toy boat, 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 toy boat. No, toy boat. I would have to concentrate. Really, really concentrate on that one. Becomes Torbit, just like a tongue twister. Yeah, toy boat, toy boat, toy boat, toy boat, toy boat, toy bit, the toy bit. It's a toy bit on the lake. Look at that toy bit on the lake. It's a 2-bit toy bit. That's all it is. It's just floating around on that lake. It's absolute disaster. Floating around on that lake, that toy bit. There we go. Now I can't. My goodness. Toy boat. One of those awful things. I don't know. I suppose if you say any kind of combination ridiculously fast. Like there's a game that a friend of mine, he and I are playing called Northgard, which is a little Viking RTS type of thing. And in it, you have to mine iron from an iron mine. But between the two of us, we always say, I have to now mine... What? I have to mine iron? I have to iron mine. Yes, I have to iron mine now. My mine iron. It's ridiculous how we get confused about that. And our mouths strange and our brains, how all of that kind of comes together. It's really, really, really weird. Scorchcrawler says, what are your thoughts? I'm just watching the time here. What are your thoughts on a DM fitting loot to the party? For instance, at a table I play at, our party went on a side quest to hunt down a legendary sword, but once we found it, it was a great sword. No one in our party can use a great sword, so it felt kind of awkward. Should GMs change loot in their campaigns quests to fit the party to a degree? Abso-friggin-lutely. Or at the very least, as you find the great sword, Another group of NPC heroes should arrive and go, "You have found the great, great sword. The great, great, great sword. We were here, sent on a quest by our master to retrieve it. Can we not give you this weapon appropriate for your party magic item in exchange?" I mean, finding the sword, that's a great quest. The quest that ends in such a damp squib way, that is where my blood pressure starts to rise. That is an absolute and utter failure. If you found that quest by mistake and it was just something that you were not supposed to find out and the GM has it planned for much later on or whatever, or the GM is, and I hate to say this, randomly rolling the equipment on a chart going, "Oh, yeah, you found a great sword," would it have killed the GM to say you find a long sword, or you find a double-bladed sword, or you find something, anything except for something that your party can't use? No. It is, for me, it's like, oh, that's just dumb. Dumb, 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 dumb. There we go. Thank you. Mida Akiko says, "In my world, I've always placed it as there are entities in the world that are far stronger than the PC party. However, those people don't care about the PCs or what they care about. How would you recommend introducing them as part of the narrative in a way that is not, here, look at the DMPC?" Yeah, it's a good question. So the idea here is that the superpowers that just don't care, those to me, if you introduce them to the party directly, will become the party's adversary straight away. It is like all those silly vampire movies where the vampire hunter is introduced to the 8,000-year-old vampire. It's bizarre in terms of, here is the greatest, evilest big person who's ever alive, who's had 8,000 years to study every form of combat under the sun, and you're going to beat them because you're young, fresh, and hip. It's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But because they've been set up that way, they then have to fight them and they have to defeat them. So with your "we don't care" kind of stuff, I think that it's important that if they don't care, they shouldn't get involved. And the PC should only hear about them from other NPCs who cannot introduce the PCs to them. So the NPC goes, "Well, we were hoping for the one-eyed lord, but I guess you'll do. You're probably well, might be a bit tough for you, but all right, we'll pay you. Who's the one-eyed lord?" "Oh, well, everyone knows who a one-eyed lord is. He's one of the most powerful people on the planet. Moved a mountain once, they say, just by thinking of it." "Why did he move the mountain, I hear you ask?" "He didn't like where it was. It was blocking his view for lunch. That's real power. But I suppose you'll do." Something like that. It's got to be backhanded in the background and something that certainly is not there to be focused on whatsoever. Otherwise, it will become the focus. Okay. Dun Grizzly says, "Have you ever played any games using Fate core system? If so, what do you think about it?" I have played a few Fate games, or two Fate games. I'm not entirely sure they were complete Fate games. I think we might have been using some speed rules. It was at a convention once. It was okay. I felt it too light for my personal taste, but like I said, it's a convention, so none of the rule systems really matter. But yes, that's the long and short of it. It wasn't something that I went, "Oh my God, I need to play the system more." But then having said that, I was also in a very bad space as a GM where I was like, well, D&D's perfect, so I don't need to play anything else. Why should I play anything else? Except for D&D and D20 Modern, which is basically D&D, but in the modern setting. And like Star Wars, which is using the D20 system, and the D20 system is just perfect. So, like, why would I play anything else, right? I was in that space, and recently I have been dragged out of that space by my friends and by sponsors and by other people. And it's been brilliant, because I've been going, oh, wow, oh my God, it's actually a little bit better. Oh, this is quite nice. Okay, let's try this one, right? Anyway. So there we are. The Grumpy Game Dev says, I'm considering a campaign taking place in an asteroid planetoid belt. You know what the next statement out of my mouth will be in terms of what do we expect. What are the highest concern things to consider of a verisimilitude in a fantasy campaign? Oh, you want to play it as a fantasy campaign? Well, this is The Expanse, isn't it? The entire plot of The Expanse is around the belters and the asteroid belts and the like. In terms of a fantasy setting, well, as long as the NPCs believe it, it will then work. That's something that I think people often kind of go, oh, well, I've got to figure it out. I've got to figure it out. Do the NPCs in your world know how it works? I mean, could you really explain the entire process of nuclear power to light bulb light emission? It just works because I turn it on, and it doesn't work, I change the light bulb and then it works. Or, you know, the nuclear reactor makes a little cloud and then we don't have lights for a while. So yeah, I worry more about making sure that the NPCs believe it. So when I look at trying to shift something or to do something in a different space, provided that the NPCs, and this comes back to that drow question, what are they doing on a daily basis? How do they survive? Where do they get their food from? What do they do for entertainment? How do they relax? How do they solve their legal issues? What is the general space? And by answering that, those mundane questions, makes the world work, really. I think that's my personal opinion. Rogby says, what are your thoughts on setting up a tactical plan for the big bad endgame? About to run a level 15 module and want to keep things action-packed. Well, and yeah. So any suggestions for keeping high-level games flowing? Don't run them. That's been my biggest bugbear with Dungeons and Dragons. I don't think I have ever run a game for any character higher than level 14 or 15 because it just becomes stupid at that point. It's like, what are you doing this turn? Write it down and then I will read that book and then you can enact that plan, and it doesn't really matter what you roll because there's always a counter. It becomes very unmanageable in my opinion. And I know that sounds like, oh, just give up, just don't do it. There isn't a way to streamline except by rolling attack and damage dice at the same time, having a 5-second rule. What are you doing? Boom, 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 boom. Okay, your turn is done. Those kinds of things, because when the party has so many powers at their disposal, they are going to be reading those powers, trying to work out which is the best one to use and how they should charge it and fire, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So, how to plan tactically for the big bad? If he knows they're coming, he should plan. If he doesn't know that they're coming, maybe he has an escape plan in case he ever gets attacked, but I don't think that he would have an actual plan itself. So that's also another idea. Welton S. Lima says, and I'm going to move on to our first review shortly, so hang tight. Welton S. Lima says, the techniques you taught helped me a lot, and I'm started using flowchart to plan an adventure together with 5-step. That's fantastic. To the question, do you use a flowchart for adventure or campaign? I don't really use a flowchart other than, to be perfectly honest with you, an old story writing technique which comes from script writing. And that's effectively a sine wave, a sine curve, if you know what those are, where it's rising action, the hero gets close to their target point, and then it's got to drop all the way down to the lowest point where they are the furthest from their goal, and then it rises back up higher than it started where they are about to achieve their goal. So a classic example of that is the 3 Star Wars films from the 70s and 80s, which Star Wars is not erasing from the timeline. I say nothing except for, well, why stop there? Why don't we take out the 3 films from the 2000s too? If you're going to clear out the junk, you might as well do a proper job. Anyway, so if you look at those first 3 films from the 70s and the 80s, A New Hope is quite literally rising tension, and the heroes destroy the Death Star. If the franchise hadn't continued, Star Wars would have been that. The Death Star was destroyed, we assume that the Empire collapses and everyone wins the day. However, because of the sine curve, what happens is they destroy the Death Star, yay, we're all happy, and then the Empire strikes back. Quite literally, the film titles give you the act structure, and then Empire Strikes Back, oh god, there we go, the heroes are at their worst point. Luke's hand's been cut off, Han Solo's frozen in carbonite, Princess Leia is a slave girl, C-3POs in pieces. You know, it's just a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. And then Return of the Jedi, we are at our furthest point, but suddenly we get to rescue our friends, and that has a little fake curve in it where we then get into the Emperor's throne room and everything seems to be going wrong, and then Darth Vader, and then we end on a happy note. So that is a flow chart, if you like, and I was originally taught that S-curve was for script. Your script should have an S-curve to it, and you just plot out those points if you want to go that way. I mean, but yeah, I just use the 5 steps and then the campaign logger. That is on the website if you so need it. Mida Akiko, another question. How would you go about effectively weaving in a big bad working in the background in a level 1 to 20 campaign while keeping them relevant through all levels of play, if not the main focus at any given single point? Mida Akiko, I would suggest you head on over to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/howtobea-great-game-master, one long word. And you will see there I have a campaign creator series where I talk about very specifically how to weave the big bad into a campaign that will run over 50 or 60 sessions, and that will enable you to have a big bad who pops in, goes out, comes in, goes out, comes in, goes out. So that is there, that is in existence. Check that out if you so choose. Okay. Last question. I'm taking one last question for now. Then I will review some submissions, and then I will come back to your questions. Hold your horses. Last question before we go to review is Mr. Cades. Mr. Cades says, in a post-apocalyptic, there's another word to try and say 10 times, apocalyptic, how do you choose what type of apocalypse to go with? I have so many ideas for magical and nuclear apocalypses, but I can't choose which one to go with. Well, I have just done, and you can find it on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/greatgmlive. I have just been in a post-apocalypse game, one-shot game, the most surreal game of my gaming career. And I've gamed with some pretty weird people. But nonetheless, that game, the game setting was from a Kickstarter called Maximum Apocalypse, which has just finished, as a matter of fact. But I think you can still get in if you go into their, whatever they call it, their post-pledge manager thing. Very cheap rule system, very simple, T10 percentile Cthulhu thing. And they just used all of them. They literally just used all of them. There are, I think, 11 apocalypses that fall on humankind at the same time. A nuclear reaction as a result of the nuclear power stations that have run out of, that are being overtaxed because there's no more fuel in the world, goes ballistic, releases kaiju, aliens arrive because of the nuclear explosion, and then all of the other apocalypses happen at the same time. The nukes cause the kaiju cause zombie. It's just insanity. But that's a really good one. Okay, so no more questions for now. So just hold on to your questions, yeah? If you hold on to your questions, please, then I will come back to them in a little bit, because now we must show some love to the submission of the great library. And I think what is important is to show you the requirement. Now, this was in part my mistake. It was my mistake because I released both pieces of paper at the same time. And so people took them as being connected. They were not actually connected, but they were. They ended up being, I should say. So I will show you this screen first. This is the poster that I put up. I was looking for someone to convert a brief into an opening scene for an adventure. An opening scene. everybody wrote the entire adventure out. Or at least a hell of an adventure for an opening scene. This was the plot. The wizard's apprentice tells them, the PCs, that there was a fire, okay, and it was created by a witch. The heroes are in a burning tower. Time is running out, and they must escape. Why was it written in such an unusual space? It should have been written, the heroes are in a burning tower, time is running out, and they must escape. The wizard's apprentice tells them it was a crazed witch who set the fire. I did this purposefully, because I am an evil bastard. No, because sometimes in the 5-step plan, the combat comes before the social. Anyway, it was just a small little test to see if people understand my crazy. Now, remember to include 5 clues it was the witch. 1 clue, it might be the apprentice's stats, the escape difficulty and requirements. At least 1 monster. You should also include read out loud flavor texts and some GM notes or advice. Write it up as a text document, and you should include JPEG or JPEG sketches. Okay, straightforward. This is what should be done. Silly old me released it at the same time as I released that, which was effectively the request for people to submit their work and join the Great Library as a once-off adventure writer, and that they would need to do the following things for the particular adventure that they were going to write. Because I released them both at the same time, however, everybody interpreted that that was what they had to submit. They had to submit 10 pages with maps and monsters and all kinds of things for what I had originally intended. What does this mean? It means that we have some absolutely amazing adventures. Not a single one of those adventures, by the way, is bad. And I would recommend that every single one who submitted them, publish them. Put them on DM's Guild, because they were really, really well done. Now, the other thing that one has to think about is that when we look at these, language is a thing. And I wasn't looking for language. That was not something that I was looking for. I didn't care, because we have editors and spelling checkers and stuff. So we don't need any of that, right? So I'm going to show you what I did, and I'm going to go through just one, and it's going to be surface, right? And hopefully I'll be able to give better feedback later on. But there were a lot of people who submitted, so I'm going to have to do the best I possibly can. No names mentioned, and where names were indicated, I have tried to redact them. I hope I succeed. So this was the first one that I looked at, called Fire on the Hill. Recommended levels 1 through 3. Where stuff is in red, usually, it means either this is stupid or this is illegal and so cannot be included in the adventure. So here, for example, there is direct reference to Forgotten Realms in one of the human kingdoms in Eberron, or in a quiet corner of Dwendalian Empire, or the menagerie coast of Wildermont. It's highlighted in red because if you wanted to release this as a commercial product, you would have to cut that section out. You're not allowed to use certain copyrighted terms when you are writing for Dungeons and Dragons specifically. Each, by the way, OGL, Open Game License, is specific to the system. So one thing that you have to look for is different in another system to the one that we are looking in. Nonetheless, so Fire on the Hill. Remember the context. The PCs are in a tower. It's on fire. The apprentice has somehow survived and tells the PCs the witch did it. And then the PCs have to escape from the tower. That was the brief in summation. Okay. It was very interesting to see how many of the apprentices were young, spotty, acneed youth. Usually young males who were learning stuff. It was very, very interesting. Anyway, so the wizard Alendro Grison has been performing dangerous experiments on elemental creatures in his tower at the edge of town, but he's been getting away with it so far by keeping his experiments away from civilization and by currying the favor of the mayor and the peasantry. However, Grison has also disposed of his experiments in the woods and helps the mayor get rid of the forest spirits. the Witch of the Forest, Sorencia of Gentar, lovely names, has repeatedly warned Grissom to stop. And since he hasn't, she has used suggestion to cause his apprentice Bafferty to forget about a magma method in the wizard's personal quarters. This starts a fire, and then the PCs get involved. The goal of this adventure is to introduce the party to a growing conflict between the Witch of the Forest and the Wizard of the Town, and the allies that both are gradually being brought to bear against one another. Neither side is entirely in the right or in the wrong. The Witch would be all too happy to see the local town wiped off the map, and so the players are free to choose sides, attempt diplomacy, or exploit the situation for their own personal ends. By the end of this adventure, players should understand what each side wants and where they can go for more information. So I didn't prescribe a layout. This was chosen by the author, and I have to say this layout made perfect sense. When I was reading through it, it's like, okay, good. I've already got the adventure. I don't need more. I can now start running it. Okay, so Sorencia of Gentar is going to try and beat up Alendro Grissom's space by causing his apprentice to burn down his tower. It's brilliant. It's easy. I now know what I need to do. The rest of this is just giving me information that I might not particularly want to. So we then start talking about DC Wisdom perception checks. So by the way, this is the correct way to outline or do writing if you're doing something for D&D 5th edition. It's always the attribute and then the skill check. Why they do it that way, search me. I think it's pathetically silly. It's like, well, just make a DC 10 perception check. Can I use something else? Well, it's context-based, right? Anyway, don't get me started. This is another reason why I needed to find authors who actually knew what they were doing so they could write it out for me. The flavor text is blocked out in bold and italics, which is absolutely wonderful. And the yellow is me going, yes, okay, great technical layout, good adventure, nice names. The text needs work. So if it's in yellow, usually it's me saying this needs work. If it's in blue, usually it's me rewriting or adding in something. So the reason why I felt this needed reworking is just that the way it was written was very dramatic. Now, it could be dramatic, but I generally, in my adventures, try not to write dialogue unless it's very specific. I just found it very, very odd. Sirs and dames, my name is Bafferty, apprentice to the wizard Grissom, who lives in the old watchtower. A terrible old witch has set a fire on the top floor, and it's burning down as we speak. The wizard is out at the moment, but his lab is full of books and notes and reagents that I need to save. Can anyone help me? In real life, that's the dialogue. Help! The tower's on fire! Everything's gonna burn! Help! Help! Oh, help! So, when we start looking at this kind of stuff, I mean, dialogue is notoriously difficult, and if you don't write scripts for a living, it's going to be a problem anyway. So it's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine. That is the information we need to give. Now we need to rewrite it in a way that actually sounds like someone talking. And the best way to test that is to read it out aloud and put yourself in the same situation. Okay. This in blue, as I said, it's thoughts. So what they've done is this particular adventure, the entire tower is obviously burning down. I mean, that's the whole point. But they wanted the PCs to have sort of like 5 minutes or so to look around. And then every 30 seconds, things were happening. The tower was burning down. So they wanted there to be like a tracker or something. So that in blue is me saying, yes, let's actually just put a tracker graphic in that the DM can just tick off as that tower burns down, so it's easier to keep track of what's happening. And then underneath that track would obviously be the triggers that are then occurring. I'm not going to go through it much more than that. As you can see, what I did like was that they highlighted clue number 1. There was some erroneous information here. The item has no value since no merchant will buy it, but the local druids would be interested in seeing both the statuette and the note. How do the players know that? So there's some things that you go, well, how do they know that? So if it's a nature check, they get the druid information, that kind of stuff. This was stuff that just needed to be I'm not gonna go through it. Then this was another clue that had just been left out. overall, this was a phenomenal submission. As you can see here, all those skill checks are laid out. There's potions of... I mean, it's absolutely clear as to what's going on. Another red flag, Dungeon Master's Guide, page 123. Not allowed to do that. But it's just... it was a pleasure to read. It was a lot of fun. Yes, we all go to Home Brewery or to GM Binder and we make our stat blocks in there. The map was... I didn't think it was absolutely necessary at all, just in terms of it was very clearly explained. But there's a functional map. Doesn't have to be beautiful. Obviously, for what we'll be doing it in Dungeon Fog. But absolutely functional. Gives us exactly what we need. And there we go. So I felt that this was a really, really, really good submission. And it stood out head and shoulders. Now, it looks like there's lots of notes and stuff, but this is nothing. You should see my books coming back from my editor, Game Master's Vault. It's mainly just red everywhere, and then I have to go back and try and explain what I'm talking about. So, yeah, I think that one of the things that came across quite often, I think, was the fact that when writing these adventures, you could see someone who had written the adventure having planned it out first and worked out what they wanted to do versus someone who was writing as they were going. And so there was slippages happening in the narration. Or you were looking at it, you were going, I think you changed your mind here. Still very good ideas, but it becomes apparent who had a solid plan and who didn't. Alan Robinson says, why do witches always take the blame? Well, they always take the blame because traditionally they always have taken the blame. They're very good at taking the blame. But yes, you are quite right. And again, that was the opportunity for one to subvert those expectations, right? And I don't think that the witch was evil in almost any of them. There was one where she was. There was a very clever one where she was. So, yeah. So, yes, there we are. All right. So, I think, you know, I was walking around the park this afternoon, as one does. You go for a walk. And I was thinking, how does one start writing? How does one start writing? Because I have reached out to the people that I wanted to work with for this project. I have sent out emails. And the one person came back and said, straight away, which is fantastic, came back and said it was because of this nudge that they started writing. And I think that's the bottom line, is that they started writing because they needed a spark. Sometimes that spark's external. I know for me it certainly was. I will never forget the first screenplay that I ever wrote. I was 20. Yeah, 20. And I was working at that time as an editor assistant for a film company in South Africa. And one of my jobs was reading scripts. I would read scripts that came in. And if I thought they were interesting, I would give them to my boss, who would then read them again. And if he thought they were interesting, he would then give them to the producer, who would then possibly not read them anyway, but would eventually look at them. And I said, I can do this kind of stuff. And my boss went, all right, well, you've got 2 weeks. Give me a screenplay in 2 weeks. Any topic. Go. And I'll give it to the producer and see what he says. So I wrote the script in 2 weeks. It's not that difficult. Anyone who's on the writing supporters group with me on the Discord channel knows that I can bang out a lot of text. Doesn't mean it's very good, but it certainly can be hammered out. And I wrote it and I handed it to him. And he looked at it and he went, wow, that's 94 pages. That's great. Good job. And I asked him if he was going to show it to the producer, and he went, what's it about? I told him. He went, no, it's not for this company. You should have thought about that before you started writing. And I'll never forget the idea. It was such a pathetically boring idea. It was a little comedy called Painting David. That's what it was about. And it was about a group of retired women who they were an art group. And they entered an art competition. But the art competition was to paint a male nude to celebrate the human form. And so the whole film was about how they were trying to get a man naked into their art studio and then actually paint the naked man. And, you know, it was one of those typical little comedies where the only woman who could paint properly, I forget her name now, she could paint beautifully, but the only problem was that she was so embarrassed by seeing a naked man that every time she saw him from the front, she just fainted. You know, and of course she and he fall in love, you know, typical nonsense. Anyway, that screenplay, I submitted it to a whole bunch of competitions and stuff, and I got taken all over the country and spoke to producers and stuff. But once I had done that, I had broken that initial resistance, and then I could write another one. And so then I wrote another one, and then another one, and another one, and eventually get there. So to write a adventure, the bottom line is just do it. And don't be afraid of what anybody says. Because as much as I mark stuff up in red, it means I've read your work and I think it's worth improving because I'm taking the time to mark it up in red. If you haven't written anything, I can't mark up anything in red. And if you haven't kind of put it out there, no one can also add red to it. So I think that's very important. So there you are. Desmond, I really thank you for your support on that one. It was a fun comedy. I mean, you would watch that, and at the end of it, you're going, "Oh, that was nice. Yeah, another cup of tea." You know, one of those Saturday afternoon, rainy afternoon kind of films. That was the plan. Actually, I should get hold of the production company. I met with a British producer. He was in South Africa looking for scripts, and he was very interested in it. Maybe I should find him again now that I'm in this country and say, "Oi, remember me? It was 2000 and 2000 AD. I sent you a script." So there you are. Okay. It's your choice, folks. We've got another half hour. Do you want me to go through another one of the submissions, or do we go back to questions? Your choice now. Submissions or questions? Just type it into chat, if you please. Three for submissions, 4 for submissions, 5 for submissions. Okie dokes. By virtue of speedy typing, it is submissions. The people have spoken. Diese Volken hacht gesproken. No, there's no ge. It's just die Volken. I don't know. That's my bad German for the night. Right. Okay, out of sheer curiosity, if any of you live in the Nottingham area, let me know, because I'm looking to move into an apartment there, so I'd love to get some ideas on it. AK Writer says, can we still write and submit adventures to you, $100 or not? Don't care too much. So yes, you can if you're a patron. There's a system in that space where if you, I think it's a $3 patron, there you go. Das Volk hat gesprochen. Ah, there we go. Sprechen becomes sprochen. Okay, whatever. I apologize to Krishka. Thank you for that education that I so sorely have forgotten. All right, so the very next one that we will go through then is the very next one. And this one, well, I'll let you have a look at it and judge it. Now, this is a more normal layout, and certainly Martin will be doing the layout. Mark Keyworth says, you live near Nottingham, if that helps. Well, that might help, very much so. What's Nottingham like, Mark Keyworth? Okay, so here it is. This is the other one. If you had difficulty with that first one, my goodness, because people were trying to fit stuff onto the page. Now, as a lecturer of many, many years, I am very much aware of looking at the line spacing, looking at the text spacing, and all those kinds of wonderful things. I didn't care about that. I didn't set an actual page limit for the submission process. The page limit is for the actual adventure later on. Anyway, it's all right. It was a good exercise. And frequently, when you are writing professionally, you will have to shorten work that you've already done. So for nautical campaigns, for example, my book, How to Be a Complete Guide to Nautical Campaigns, we set it out as we had wanted it to be, and it was just too many pages. It made it too expensive to print. So we went through and we cut out whole chapters, or not whole chapters, whole paragraphs. We're like, okay, that's out, that's out, that's out, that's repetition, that's out, that's out, that's out, that's out. It is what it is. All right. So again, the dual page layout is fine. What threw me initially was that the level 5 stuff. It was like level 5, level 4. It kind of felt backwards. So anyway, it was absolutely fine. This adventure is designed for a party of 4 to 5 characters of level 2. Leading up to this adventure, the party was tasked with delivering a magical flying carpet to the dwarven archmage Kurgan Ornithine, who lives in a tower built on an island in the middle of a wide river. Okay, so this was, I felt, a little bit out of place, so the blue text means it should go somewhere else, or something along those lines. A massive explosion suddenly bursts through your calm meal. The tower shakes, the birds of the aviary chirp and flutter about frantically, and the burning aroma of smoke creeps through the floorboards. I felt that this sentence should go a little bit later on, because then the sentence would start, the tower shakes, the birds of the aviary chirp and flutter about frantically, and then the burning aroma of smoke starts to creep through the floorboards. Suddenly, a massive explosion, shakes the table. I just feel that there could be some drama happening there. Only 5 minutes ago, Archmage Kurgan Ornithine left on the flying carpet you delivered to him, eager to test out this magical rug while running a few errands. So there was something missed out in this adventure, if I recall. We don't know how much they got paid for delivering that magic carpet. So the idea of getting the party into the adventure, yes, it's good to suggest ways to get in. And you'll see when we do more of these submissions that there are others who have said, here are some ways in which you can get into the adventure. And they listed a whole bunch of generic ways. By requiring them to deliver a magic flying carpet, it's kind of like, well, why did they deliver it? What reward would you expect as a second level player for delivering a magical carpet? Why not just take it and sell it somewhere else and make an absolute fortune? So those are the kinds of things that we have to look at. It's absolutely fine if you know that your party is at level 1 will be given a contract. Deliver this carpet to the Archmage Kurgan. He lives on an island in the middle of a river. You go. I'll pay you 500 gold pieces. Sounds brilliant, doesn't it? That could have been... Anyway, so that's not the point. Right, so Lysander's the apprentice and is tasked with serving you, and of course he is absolutely terrified when he hears of smoke and soot. The characters start in the top level of Ornithine's tower. Lysander Stenhardt is a teenage human with messy dark blah 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 blah. Always teenage human male, messy dark hair, round glasses, pale. He's basically Harry Potter, which again is not a problem. It's just interesting how these themes recur in our minds. His first priority, this was a cute little idea. His first priority is to ensure that the birds in the aviary are safe. And so he spends his whole time getting the birds out of the tower, but keeping them in cages so they don't fly away. Whilst he says, the rest of the party have to go and do stuff and whatever. Because there's mephits. Again, notice mephits were used quite a lot in many of these because obviously fire mephits is easy. And then there's some more description and stuff and it works from there. Do you see how this different layout, this introduction, introduces the players to the plot, but it doesn't introduce us as the reader to what the entire idea is, unlike the first one. Now, I'm not saying that the first one is better than this one. What I am saying, though, is that the first one guided us into the adventure rather than just dropping us straight into the adventure. So it makes it more accessible. And again, that wasn't something that I said I was looking for, but it is a differentiator in terms of level of experience. And it's something that you can think about when you are writing your own material, is this entire story in your head. The reader does not. Okay, once the party agrees, he begins to calm the birds down. They agree to go and look out for the fire mephits and stuff, right? So there's 2 magma mephits, there's some smoke mephits. Again, beautifully written out. There's this Gelid Bellows, which is a cool magical item, which if the players figure out to use early on, will make this quite a fun adventure. It blows out ice cold air and immediately extinguishes fires and stuff. So that's if the players actually use it. Could it be that these bellows blow magically cold air? I wrote this because I didn't know that that's what it did at the time. The description is a set of bellows with birch handles. It's nice to give it that kind of flavor. Its air bag dyed sky blue. Again, beautiful information. Simply holding these bellows sends a shiver through your arm. I think I broke the punctuation. So the GM needed to know that it puts out fires straight away. I felt that this wasn't laid out clearly, or maybe I missed it. But anyway. The primordial engine is this great little... This MacGuffin is in the base of the tower. It's overheating. It's doing all kinds of weird and wonderful things. It keeps Mephits trapped. So if they can get the Mephits back in there, they will be locked away forever, and that's absolutely brilliant. There are a couple of rooms that they have to fight through. And that's then when we start learning the real behind-the-scenes story. And this was a little bit of a... I think this was the one that was a little bit complicated in terms of understanding how that relationship was. This dragon is the north, on the north. Okay, so Thuban is the familiar of the witch Natia Ikashi. I like the name. And he's there to steal and unlock and do all kinds of wonderful things, I believe. But he's a fairy dragon, so he's going to be quite tricky to catch. If they can, obviously, then they get the spell book back, and that's absolutely fine. So there is that little entry into the whole thing. We start to learn more. The fires obviously are spreading. What else was there in here that I thought was particularly fun? Lots of little fighting and that kind of thing. What I did like, was it this one? I think it was this one. Escaping and consequences. Whilst Lysander the apprentice performed some damage control, saving Archmage Ornithian's bird collection and stopping the fires from the tower is how the players achieve victory, right? So that's great. And then there's some calculations as to how much survives and stuff that burns down and etc, etc, etc. Now the spell book, if they got it, that's great. If they don't get it, that's fine. Then there's some notes on role-playing Lysander, which I thought was great. It was really good. And yeah, again, just some information that I had here was that it's a red draconic familiar and it changes color as it ages. I was like, well, how would they know that unless they're making and it does say intelligence check, but to me it was like, well, we don't need that sentence. We can do other stuff and get there. And then Lysander's stats, pretty much everyone had him as the same kind of mage. Lots of magical items, which I thought was great because they're in a wizard's tower. So why not give them lots of magical items and then lots and lots of monster information. Natia Ikashi is listed there as well. So yeah, overall, it's a very well presented. And of course, we have a beautiful map of a circular tower. These are always awkward to design because you always get that gap behind them. Absolutely hate working with circular rooms and all the way down into the whole thing. Now, this is the part that I liked. And again, it's even said here, it can be ignored. The whole idea of what happens afterwards was looked at in this particular one. And I think that's great because it then gives the PCs a journey and it gives the GM something to bite into. So that worked really well. Again, I should have highlighted that in red. I missed that one. Yeah, it was a really good adventure. I enjoyed it. If I were to say one particular thing about it, it would simply be that it was a little bit jumbled in terms of its structuring. So yes, that would be the only thing that I would say. And I deleted this sentence, which is 5 feet in front of the first character as they enter the room. Why is it 5 feet in front of the first character? Why don't I just put it there? Let them pick it up. We don't need that kind of stuff. So I really enjoyed that one. I did. Again, structure and layout, very, very, very important. Lysander was a Spartan admiral. Yes, that's absolutely true. That is entirely true. But yes, names are a different kind of thing. Now, when we are looking at these submissions, another thing that you want a little bit of predictability. So when I look at that last mission, I go, okay, it's a tower, it's on fire, we've had this duplicitous action going on, and that's absolutely fine. What do we expect? Most people hit that. Some people went in a very different direction. And we'll get there because we're going to be able to do another one. We're going to be able to do 3 tonight. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Okay. I've got a few questions here, which I'll look at very, very, very quickly. Ornithian sounds like birds. Maybe the mage studied magical birds. Just a thought. So, Jose Ramirez, I don't think that was a mistake. I think that was true. Ornithology is the study of birds. So Ornithian, I think, is definitely a link to that, it's a nice little touch. It is a nice little touch. AK Writer says, some weeks ago I asked you how you'd recommend introducing absolute newbies to RPGing. Can you see yourself dedicating to a video to it? I can indeed, because I'm going to add it to the list of videos that I need to make. Introducing newbies to RPG. Yes. Okay. Right. Next submission. This one had a lot of stuff with it. Okay. This next one was very different from the others. Not a bad thing. I think it was a really cool idea. I think that the place where it fell down was there was too much going on, and maybe the focus was in the wrong place. Really cool idea. And I'm going to show you all of the stuff that came through because it really made a lot of sense. Okay. Here we go. So this is the layout. This was absolutely fine. I do this kind of stuff and send it to my artists all the time. I don't care what it looks like. It's just about getting the entire thing across, right? This was a drawing that came through, a Photoshop composite thing. The Wizard Tower is this giant guard tower that projects a field of anti-magic around a prison that contains the worst psychopathic magic user criminals on the planet. Spoiler alert, the tower's gonna fall down. They're gonna escape. Okay? Isn't that a wonderful premise? And how different is that from the witch is trying to burn down the tower because she hates the wizard? In this case, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And I think that is where it failed in terms of the simple idea was overly complicated and didn't need to be, I think. Or there was a simpler way of getting to the same outcome. But what a great idea. Yeah, the image is sure, but I am not looking for a graphic designer or someone who knows how to use Photoshop. I am looking for someone who knows how to tell a story. This tells me the entire story. I don't have to even read it. It's like, cool, the tower's going to fall down. They're going to escape. I have 20,000 adventures just waiting to escape from that island now. It's absolutely lovely. Okay, so there's a redacted name. The Watchtower of Casticel Prison. So this one did not benefit from a layout, right? And as a result, it becomes very much like a wall of text. But that's a layout issue. I wasn't caring about that kind of stuff. I've given you the plot. Quite literally, the PCs are bringing in a bounty of a mage that they have caught, and they bring it up to the Wizard of Casticel. And this is the setup of the entire area. So the Wizard of the Watchtower of Casticel. Casticel is the prison, sorry. Their Coatuo. I hate that name. Kuo-toa. Kuo-toa. I hate that collection of vowels right there. It freaks me out. The Kuo-toa are almost allowed to roam free around the outskirts of the prison, and they will hunt down anyone who has been branded. So that was the key thing, was that you were taken to the watchtower, you were branded, and then you were sent onto the island. And if you tried to swim across, your brand would alert the Kuo-toa that there was edible stuff. If you didn't have the brand, you weren't consumed by the Kuo-toa. Brilliant. It's watchdogs. That's all they are. Watchdogs. It's a wonderful obstacle that PCs are going to have to overcome, because we know there's a freaking prison down there. We're going to go in there one way or another, right? So it's a great setup. It's a great, great, great setup. And they cause the area to be, to reek, to absolutely have a disgusting smell, because all the bits of fish that they leave around and all that kind of stuff, right? Okay, so that's the setup. That's the premise. The players arrive. They've got this mage in a box chained up. I forget exact details. And they pass a woman who's obsessed with her son. She fills out requisitions every day. She's kind of happening in the background, so that was absolutely fine. Here it says the GM can decide how much above info they want to relay, as well as when and how to deliver said info to PCs. This should have been in every color of the rainbow flashing. The point of writing a module is to give the GM the information and to show them how they should deliver it to the PCs. Because there is a lot of info here. There is a lot of info in terms of setting all of this kind of stuff up. And so this has been left then to the reader to decide. So it's a bit disconnect in terms of the purpose of the material, right? But it is a classic mistake. Or it could be that the author ran out of space and just hacked out the part which says, show them the woman filling out her form and the guard going, you know, Miriam, you fill these forms out every day and you never get to see your son. Why do you do it? Well, tell me, why do you do it every day for 20 years? You know, he's an old man by now. And she says, nonetheless, I will follow procedure. That was important, right? So this is a very, very important piece of information that we've now been told the GMs can decide if they want to or not. So that was something to bear in mind. If it's important, tell it to the PCs. That's why I had in the advert saying, read out aloud text must be included. That would be something definitely to be read out aloud. Enter the players. Okay, the players are bounty hunters. This is a challenge too. Remember, these are plug-and-play modules. It was not specifically stated, yes, in the requirement that it was such a device, but moving forward, that's something that we'll be looking at. So if you are writing an adventure, bear in mind prescribing what the PCs were doing before the adventure starts means that either this is a initial setup adventure or that your group has somehow become bounty hunters, so now you can use this module. That seems very restrictive. Okay. There's a whole write-up of this battle of capturing a wizard that's taken years and is very difficult, and you've got, you know, all this kind of stuff, and it's great backstory for PCs if they want it. If they don't want it, we need to figure out how better to get them there. Okay, constitution check not to vomit from smell as you approach the watchtower on a rocky sea cliff. The layout is not correct. I know exactly what it means as a GM, but I don't know what the DC is. Again, I'd like to have seen the DC in there. It could have been a 12. It doesn't really matter. But yeah. All right. So then there's you arrive at the door. You then take an elevator, this weird kind of elevator circle-y thing that takes you up level by level. And there's a featherfall spell per level, so you can jump out and kind of get up and down. It's the travel MacGuffin basically, because it's a really tall tower, like really tall tower. Then this stuff, which is the dialogue, some of it's read out loud, others of it isn't, and some of it's too much. So this is more of what you would find in a novel, and it's very well written, but yes, it's not read out loud kind of stuff. So there's a better way of saying it. Instead of writing out the scene, describe the intention of the scene. And in this case, the Wizard of Castellcel intends to allow the PCs to brand this mage. So they get to brand this bounty that they've brought in and then send them on their way and then pay them. Or just pay them and get them out. That's all. So all of that just boils down to intent, basically. Then what happens is there's a giant commotion that happens downstairs, and then Kuo-toa starts spreading out throughout the tower, destroying the tower and causing all kinds of issues, things like that. I wasn't sure what these points were for. Now we get the perception check. Again, we were not given any numbers. Long and short of it is the Kuo-toa are attacking. They set the tower on fire exactly as required. And big battles, lots of fun going on, lots of descriptions, which is really great. Lots of battles through different levels. Thornsby is a name that I didn't come across before, so I don't know where that comes from. I think that might have been the original name of the wizard, and then that got changed, and it didn't get changed here, so that kind of felt a bit weird. The witch then arrives. She's trying to rescue her son. Remember, I said the witch was important, but we didn't know why. She was the woman who was applying every day to see her son Roland. And now she's part of the combat. If we gave that information to the players earlier on, it's like, hey, you're that woman who was applying to get her son out. Why are you helping us now? Except it looks like she's actually doing it. And then, boom, you know, the whole thing goes, falls over, the tower collapses. The PCs obviously are on that side of the tower in the prison. And we are left with this wonderful, wonderful next adventure option. As we pull back, the magic dampening field is gone. The watchtower is down. Smoke is clearing, steam rising. Marrakesha, the witch, is unconscious. We pull further back to see about 100 meters in all directions from the fallen watchtower. The sea rattles to life as thousands of Kuo-toa begin to frantically charge towards opening in Castellcel's wall, of which your party now stands in front, with a whole bunch of psychotic wizards behind. Like I said, it was a great idea. The execution is where it kind of fell down in terms of just being chunks of text. And the notion here that there were a few things we were asked for. The apprentice's stats, which I didn't see. I could be mistaken, but I didn't see them submitted. There were stats for the Kuo-toa, which was just the scanned sort of photocopy. So of the actual stat box, which is fine, but we'd like to customize. Okay, right. So we've got 7 minutes. So if you do have any questions, please let me know if you have some questions. We've got 7 minutes. I'm not going to do another one. We'll do that next week if you want us to continue doing these. But yes, come back to me, and if you've got a question, we've got a few minutes. Let's answer them. Okay, I see a question already. So Scorchclaw says, one of my favorite campaigns ever was a prison break. So yes, this becomes a wonderful, wonderful prison break, but it's a beautiful one because the players fall into the prison. So the mages inside the prison will think the players are coming to rescue them. The players are not coming there to rescue them. So they've got a deep, dark secret, which I would love to have as a blackmail card for the bounty that they brought in. The players now have to defend the prison from these Kuo-toa, which means they have to release all of these mages to fight off the Kuo-toa, cocoa butter, whatever the hell they are. And so it's a wonderful setup, isn't it? And that's what we're looking for. I mean, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for something that makes you excited and go, yeah, this is super cool. Desmond says, I feel this has been written more like the start of a novel. It certainly has a very literary approach rather than a technical manual. And I think that's also a very different thing to bear in mind, is that when you're writing an adventure, it is a technical map for the GM to understand. It's not written as a piece of beautiful literature. That is a very good point. That's a very, very, very good point. Alan Robinson says, do you plan to review any additional submissions going forward? I will go through all of the submissions that were sent through. There were 11 in total. I've now done 3. So next week I will do the next batch. So I will definitely get there. Don't worry about it. Of those 3, which one grabbed you the most? I'd be curious to know. I would be curious to know which one grabbed you the most. The one where the wizard is sending mephits into the forest so the witch gets revenge on the wizard. The one where the witch is just trying to steal stuff and the tower burns down, but there is the magical device. Or the prison one. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. Do you plan to review? Okay, I've done that one. Thanos 103 says, do you have any idea for a commonly found document in your world? What's in it and what is it for? A commonly found document. A commonly found document in the one world that I play, which is my world of Utherios, would be the Hero Guild membership form, which heroes keep on them, and they keep track of what they have done and expenses, so they can submit those when they go to the Heroes Guild to get paid for doing a Heroes Guild work thing. And then they get to deduct expenses from that. So that would be a commonly found thing. A broadsheet or a news sheet would be another thing. I like to have those lying around. Wanted posters. That's definitely a common document that you would find in some parts of the world. In other parts it would be very rare, of course, because each culture uses documents and papers differently. And then the next follow-up question to that is, are you doing World Anvil Summer Camp yourself? Unfortunately, I really don't have the time to do the World Anvil Summer Camp. I would love to do that. I really would love to do that. But I'm working on the Complete Guide to Creating Epic Characters, which is the next book. Another book popped onto my screen, so I'm having a meeting about that next Saturday. I'm busy putting together this adventure library, the Great Library. So there is literally not enough time in my day to do it all. Scorchclaw says, along the lines of apocalyptic campaigns, any execution ideas for party witnesses the opening of the apocalypse, but the campaign itself takes place sometime after? Think of a literary prologue and how to possibly pull that off. Yes, so what I would do is I would have the players gather around your table. I would have them generate level 1 characters that have not got the apocalypse stuff added. So figure out what that is. Get them to create everyday people. A lawyer or an accountant or a YouTuber or a mechanic or whatever they want to be. Then dramatically describe the apocalypse. And ask them how each of them survived the apocalypse. They must describe how they got out of it. Do not accept them saying, well, I just hid and survived. Where did you hide? How long did you hide there for? Did you hide with others? In other words, take them on the character journey of developing their story, their backstory. Who did they hide with? How did those people influence them? Where are those people now? Are those people still alive? Does the character owe those people anything? Is there a bond, a relationship? And why did they leave those people to now join the game, which is now 1 year later? And that's then when they get to add on the apocalypse details to their character. They've now created a far more interesting backstory as a group going, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe we were in the same cell. Maybe we survived together. Isn't that brilliant? Isn't that really going to work very, very, very well for building those kinds of backstories? Make it collaborative. Make it collaborative. Okay, AK Writer says, what are, in your experience, the most common character tropes which one could consider to weave into such pre-written adventures? What do you mean such pre-written adventures? Okay, so the character tropes are quite literally, as far as I'm concerned, we fall back on the roles of the NPCs. And that is mentor, guide, enabler, supporter, and the other one, filler, right? And so those are the tropes that you fall back on. This character is going to provide the PCs with some advice that will set them on the right path. This character is going to actually take them to that path, but no further. This character is going to provide them with equipment that they might need to defeat the thing on the path. You know, so those for me are tropes that are really, really useful. And I did videos on those a long time ago on the different types of NPCs and why they should be in your campaign and why you should use them. That to me is much better than saying, okay, well, you need an old grizzled druid who has birds in his beard and he wears a beaver skin and he's slightly nutty and he rides a sleigh drawn by rabbits. I mean, that is you using your own creativity. But in terms of actual what should you have, that's what you should have. We are out of time, so I will take one last question and then we are done. And so that question was from Alan M. Hey guy, how would you set up an adventure where the party ends with a battle of the band to beat the final boss? Well, Tenacious D and The Pick of Destiny is definitely a movie to watch if you want that. Otherwise, you could watch that other awful D&D movie that came out that has Peter Dinklage in it. That was an awful film. Shame they struggled so badly to make that film. And then when they finally got it out there, it was just a disaster. They had a music playoff thing, which is so weird. As long as all of the party can contribute, so if the barbarian is providing percussion by hitting orcs or drums, and the wizard is providing sizzle or zing or whatever it is that you would have in your music, I think, then that's what I would do, is just make sure everyone can participate, and it's not just the bard showing off their high charisma and that sort of thing. Okay. Right. And then there's a question about Japan. You lived in Japan. Did you try or find any Japanese TTRPG games? If yes, any recommendations? Sadly, I met the author of someone who converted some of the Japanese TRPGs into English, but I never actually got to play any of them. Mainly because everyone just went, oh, please run a game for us. So I could only run stuff that I kind of knew. I'm fairly certain if I asked some of my friends out there, hey, please run a game for me, they'd go, oh, maybe I'll run a game for you, but I'm very nervous. I hate it when I make people nervous about running games. I know I'm an awful player, so I don't ask very often. But unfortunately, no, I didn't get to play any. And certainly the Japanese players that I met all wanted to do D&D because that's what you do when you have a gaijin who can run D&D for you, is you play D&D. Yeah. Okay, so there we go. I never got to see the answer about Nottingham. I'm being selfish now. I'm using my show for my own benefit here. Anyway, Nottingham it seems to be. Hopefully I'll be there by the end of next month or a little bit later on after that. So shows will continue. Don't you worry. Don't you panic. I will still be here. I can't find it now. It's gone. Anyway, I wish you all a fantastic week ahead. And I really hope that if you do have games running, that they are great games. We've got the return of the one-on-one RPG that I play every Wednesday at 6 p.m. GMT. I don't know why I got that time mixed up. But anyway, it's at 6 p.m. GMT on these channels. And that's a solo game that I'm running with Raj, a tabaxi trader who's way in over his head. So we're doing that. Thursday morning is the Mercs of Mischief. That's on the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Mercs of Mischief, where I am playing a barrister who's very bad. He's a very good barrister, but yeah, very odd. Pro Organized said, Nottingham is delightful, but avoid the city centre. That's good to know, because I have been looking very much at apartments in the city centre area because they have the best internet. So I will avoid the city centre. I shall also retract the one request I had, because there's some nice apartments in the city centre. They look nice. But you say avoid the city centre. Okay, well, there we are. Then, yes, so those are streams that you can catch me in this week. Yeah, because that's it. That's it. I'm in more. I'm recording more because, yes, we are definitely moving on the Star Wars front. Nottingham is famous for its evil sheriffs. Well, considering that my namesake, Guy of Gisborne, was the Sheriff of Nottingham's right-hand man, I feel that moving there is a fairly appropriate thing to do. So, yes, there we are. John Smith, thank you so much for that donation. I really do appreciate it. I have Nottingham Forest FC and Notts County FC for football. Yes, I believe those are the two big football clubs there. Yes, football is a game where a lot of people play with a round ball and they kick it with their foot, is my guess. I'm, of course, joking. So, yeah. I see you say the traffic is absurd. I can drive. I don't need to. But you can get fibre optic in most of the out areas. So that's brilliant to know. Okay, good. Pro-organised, you have just changed my search patterns as I have been looking in slightly outside of the city centre. But yes, it's not that I'm not you are not a footy fan. It's not that I don't like sport. It's just that I used to play football. We call it soccer. I used to play soccer. I was always a wing. This was many thousands of years ago when I was much, much lighter. I always used to get bored. All the sports, I used to get bored. I was never very good at them at all because I'd just get lost in my own head thinking about Dino Riders and He-Man and all those kinds of things. And then the ball would go past and people would scream and shout at me. And eventually I went, you know what? You do your thing, because guess what? Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose, or it's going to be a draw, which is basically like running an adventure. And at the end of it going, well, you didn't die, the monster didn't die, no one gets treasure. It's like, what the fuck is that point, right? Anyway, but I completely respect people who love watching sport. My favourite sport to watch is curling. I think it's an absolutely gripping sport. My favourite sport to play is bowls or squash, which is racquetball in America. Because I can win at squash really easily. If I line it up properly, I can slam my opponent against the wall, scream squash at them, and I'm technically, it's like that's the name of the game. So I'm allowed to flatten you against the wall. Actually, I'm ambidextrous, so I can use two rackets. Why am I moving to Nottingham, says Thanos 103? Because I want an apartment that I can afford, and London doesn't have any apartments that I can afford. So there we go. Right. Curling is hugely underrated. I agree. Absolutely. Well, racquetball has slightly different rules to squash, but it's the same idea. Two hot, sweaty individuals encased in a glass box frantically smacking a little ball. Anyway. All right, guys. Until later. Until next week. I wish you all the very happiest of gaming.